Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of our new program titled Mentoring Mental Health and Public Health with Tolu Omodara here on Amogates Radio Communication. It's so exciting to have you with us, and we are glad and delighted to be able to continue this very important conversation with you. Well, as we begin today, let's sort of recall some of the things we discussed last week. Last week, we looked a lot at the challenge of mentoring and mental health, and try to establish the evidence-based foundation that demonstrates a strong correlation between mentoring and mental health. We spoke a lot about different programs. We gave evidence from different programs that research had demonstrated had the ability to support mental health, different mentoring programs, right? We showed that when mentoring is used as a support for mental health, it helps to minimize the stress on the traditional mental health providers, especially when the mentors are trained as paraprofessionals, right? So mentoring has been clearly indicated to have a strong positive correlation with improvement in mental health, especially when the mentors are trained as mental health paraprofessionals and they work, of course, under the leadership of the traditional mental health professional. Now, we drew a lot of our examples last week from the United States, and it appeared to speak a lot to programs that impacted younger people, right? And today we are going to go to another nation. We're going to go more to the United Kingdom. We're going to reference a little bit of more data from the United Kingdom, and we're going to also move slightly away from the younger people and speak about workforce generally, right? Just to show that this issue of mentoring and mental health is not limited, for instance, to young people or to one nation or continent, but it can impact several segments of the demography and, of course, different continents in the globe. This is Tolu Omodara on Amogates Radio Communications, bringing you another edition of our new series titled Mentoring Mental Health and Public Health. It's a delight to have you with us, and we'll be back shortly. Thankfully, this epidemic of loneliness and isolation is something that mentoring can address. It has already been seen that, and this is according to the Mental Health Foundation of the UK, it has already been seen that mental health at work can be used to, sort of prevent this menace of isolation. So if organizations can establish a support system, right, using the framework of a mentoring program, then there can be a significant positive impact on the mental health of their workforce. I'm going to say that again. If organizations can establish a mentoring framework, right? We've been canvassing for a national mentoring framework. We've spoken a lot about that. Now we are looking at the organizational level. If organizations can establish a mentoring program, particularly for those who already have challenges with mental health or those who are at risk, if they can establish a mentoring program to serve as a support system for them, it can help them to, either weather this epidemic of loneliness and isolation or even to prevent it. Now, this mentoring program does not necessarily need to be a top-down. It can be a peer mentoring, it can be team mentoring, and of course, it can also be the traditional one-on-one mentoring. And all of this subject to the resources available to the organization, of course, the structure or the strategies that the organization may choose to use. What is important is that as organizations, it's time for us to think of establishing mentoring programs, right, to create the support system that can help to deal with the epidemic, the public health epidemic of loneliness and isolation. This is still Tolu Omodara here on Amogates Radio Communications. This is the second episode of Mentoring Mental Health and Public Health, and we are glad to be doing it with you. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. So we looked at the data or the reports from the Surgeon General of the United States. However, even in the UK, it was said that feelings of loneliness reached a record high following the effects of the pandemic. You know what that means? Record high. It's never been that high before. So, like we said at the beginning of this episode, we are going to look at another country. So this does not appear to be limited to the US, or you can say, oh, it's because there's gun violence in the US. No. These issues, these isolation issues, these mental health issues are also being seen in the United Kingdom. But thankfully, mentoring has also been established as a way of dealing with it in support of the traditional mental health processes and care channels. Well, let's look at another way that mentoring can help mental health, right? Another way is reducing levels of anxiety. Incidentally, in the United States this year again, anxiety was identified, I think, as the World Mental Health Month was celebrated, and the World Mental Health Week was celebrated recently. Anxiety was another issue, another mental health issue that the world was asked to focus on and be mindful of. I think the World Health Organization also drew attention to the need for us to, take note of what is happening in the world of mental health as a result of anxiety. As a matter of fact, the World Health Organization estimates that there is a global, international, worldwide cost of $1 trillion per year. Can you imagine that? $1 trillion per year in lost productivity due to depression and anxiety. Can you imagine that? $1 trillion. So if whatever we can think mentoring will cost in organizations at national policy levels, I doubt if it will be as much as $1 trillion. I doubt if we can spend up to $1 trillion implementing mentoring frameworks, because mentoring actually enhances productivity. So it's not just that mentoring will neutralize the loss of $1 trillion in productivity, right, due to anxiety. I'm actually hypothesizing, my thesis is that mentoring will not just, take away that loss, but it would actually even enhance the gain. So it's not just that we will not lose $1 trillion in lost productivity due to anxiety, but we would also have increased productivity, because the research has clearly indicated that mentoring does enhance mental health. So this is a case of, it's not a case of doing nothing. By doing nothing, we are going backward, but it's also a case of by doing nothing, we are not only going backward, we are also losing the potential gains that mentoring will bring. For the sake of analysis, we will not just stop the loss of $1 trillion in productivity due to depression and anxiety by introducing stronger, more consistent, more frequent, more widespread mentoring framework, but we would actually also enhance productivity. So it's not just that we will stop the loss of $1 trillion, we might also increase productivity significantly, because the data already indicates that mentoring helps to improve productivity. Let me give you an example. Again, still looking at the United Kingdom. So in the United Kingdom, for instance, it was seen that there is strong evidence, right, that when we try to address well-being at work, it increases productivity by as much as 12%. As much as 12%. When we try to address well-being, mental health being at work through things like mentoring, it increases productivity by as much as 12%. So imagine that we introduce mentoring frameworks, mentoring programs, well implemented, well supported. Well, imagine that we introduce this mentoring program. We will not just stop the loss of $1 trillion, but we could actually also increase productivity by as much as 12%. So instead of, for instance, having $1 million in an organization protected, right, we may also have an additional, for example, an additional £120,000 increase to productivity just by introducing mentoring programs and frameworks. So this issue of mentoring is even in the best interest of organizations, not just that of nations, right? We've started looking at the national level last week. We've looked at the data on the national level. We've been advocating and we'll keep advocating for national mentoring frameworks, but we are also looking at organizations and canvassing for organizations to consider introducing effective, robust mentoring programs to help their workforce to deal with mental health issues, right? For those that are already at risk of it, we can use mental health to minimize the risks that they might have, right? And then for those who may not, who have already dealt with it, you can also use mentoring to help them recover right? For those with existing issues, we can use it to help them recover. For those at risk, we can use mentoring to, prevent them from caving into that risk. And of course, we can and should deploy mentoring for mental health to the workforce as a whole. And cumulatively, when different organizations begin to adopt mentoring for mental health, right? MMA, mentoring for mental health, when different organizations begin to adopt it much more strongly, much more consistently, much more effectively, then what happens generally is the cumulative impact is that we have a better public health as a result of mentoring for mental health. Thank you very much for doing this with us. My name remains Tolu Omadara, and we'll be back shortly. In addition to reducing the level of anxiety, another way that mentoring can help mental health is by boosting self-confidence, right? By boosting self-confidence. Now, what happens when people lack that self-confidence, unfortunately, is they feel worthless, and this feeling of worthlessness, have been strongly correlated with depression, right? Those who tend to feel worthless tend to become more depressed, and I don't even want to talk about the impact on suicide, right? What is the correlation between feelings of depression and rates of suicide? I don't even want to go there. We talked a lot about that last week. What is important to know is that mentoring can help to build self-confidence and self-esteem in your organization's employees, and this is a very effective way of improving mental health across your workforce. There's so much I don't want to go into, but just also have it at the back of your mind that when you boost the self-confidence of your employees, it actually impacts on their willingness to innovate, because innovation is a risk on its own, but it increases their willingness to innovate, and the impact of that innovation comes back to your organization in dollar and cents, right? It comes back to your organization in pounds. In other words, comes back to your organization in monetary terms. So it's important to use mentoring to boost the self-confidence of your organization's employees, and by increasing their self-confidence, you increase their mental health, and by increasing their mental health, you boost their sense of self-worth. It's like a cycle, and this makes them more willing to take risks like innovating, and this will definitely have a stronger impact in terms of your bottom line. So that's another thing that it does. It increases the self-confidence of your organization's employees. Mentoring helps to increase their self-confidence in their mental health, right? And it's very important for them to feel a stronger sense of self-worth, so that way they are less at risk of caving into depression, right? Those with mentors, for instance, it's been shown that they report that they have an increase in self-confidence, especially as they feel supported in their decisions and their career growth, right, by those mentoring relationships. Those mentoring relationships have been said to be a safe space where they can express and explore new ideas, and they can also have career growth, because within that safe space, they don't feel a sense of judgment, and they also have someone they're looking up to, someone they respect, someone they admire, who is encouraging them to grow and who is guiding them as they grow. Within that space of mentoring, they also are likely to take, if I can put it that way, less risky risks, right? Less risky, in other words, meaning that even though they are taking the risks of innovation, they are also being guided. Remember, mentoring is about guiding, it's about leading, right? They are being guided by those that can cut short their journey because they have walked their path, or they've walked a similar path, so they can guide them. And that way, as an organization, even though innovation is still coming with its typical cost, right, the cost of risk, but you also have a much more efficient approach to innovation, because you have established mentoring framework where mentors can guide their proteges along the path of risk and innovation in a manner that is as efficient as possible. All of this resulting in greater productivity and profitability for your organization. So really, there is nothing to lose from mentoring. There's everything to gain from it. And you just need to get the data and see what you lose when you allow the impact of lack of mentoring to impact their mental. Because whether there is mentoring or not, there are mental health issues. That's the reality. But if you introduce mentoring, it minimizes the impact of mental health, the impact of mental health challenges on the productivity of your workforce, it then boosts the productivity of your workforce, and of course creates an environment where there can be much more efficiency due to innovation, among other things. Well, let's look at what happens. Again, still looking at the United Kingdom. Let's look at what happens, because I just said something now. I said whether there is mentoring or not, there are mental health issues. Now let's look at what the data says about that, just to let you know that this is not just a claim I'm making. The data actually indicating, right? So in the United Kingdom, it was said that the value added to the economy by people who have had or currently have mental health issues is as high as $225 billion per year. I'll say that again. According to the Mental Health Foundation in the UK, right, the value added to the economy by people who have had mental health issues or who are currently having it is as high as $225 billion. Meanwhile, that amount represents 12.1% of the United Kingdom's total GDP as at the time this data was gathered. So we have $225 billion, £1 billion per year, and 12.1% of the UK's total GDP being connected, being linked by people with mental health problems. So do you really want to put that at risk in the nation? We have to protect that, right? I think it goes without saying. So we have to look at how we can address mental health at work for those who already have those issues and for those who are at risk, because we cannot afford to allow $225 billion per year to be at risk when we can deploy frameworks like mentoring frameworks to enhance the mental health of those people who are contributing as much as $225 billion to the UK's economy. £225 billion to the UK's economy, even though they are dealing with mental health issues, right? So we have to make sure that we do not put 12.1% of the UK's GDP at risk because we cannot establish frameworks and policies and processes and programs like that of mentoring to help to enhance the mental health of these people so that they can continue to produce and they can continue to contribute to the economy of places like the United Kingdom with lower risk of mental health. Well, this is Tolu Omoda on Amogate Radio Communications. We have been looking at another episode of mentoring, mental health, and public health. And today we focused a little bit more on the United Kingdom, and we also focused a little bit more on the workplace, right? Last week we looked at the United States, and we looked more at younger people, and we looked at different programs like step-up programs and so on and so forth. And we demonstrated how mentoring had been established as a support for traditional mental health providers, especially when mentors are trained as paraprofessionals. We saw in numerical terms, in quantitative terms, how they can up the mental health support system generally for young people. And today we decided to go into the United Kingdom, and we also looked at the workspace, and we're advocating for mentoring for mental health programs to be inculcated into organizations at organizational levels to help to support the workforce, to help to boost the mental health of those who are already dealing with mental health issues or those who are at risk, and to also help to minimize the risk of lost productivity, like $1 trillion, for instance, that the World Health Organization has already said is being lost in productivity every year due to mental health issues, right? So we've looked at these things broadly, and we'll be wrapping up shortly. But just a minute and we'll be back. Well, as we wrap up today, we just want to remind us of the benefits of mentoring for organization as a way of summing up, right? When you establish mentoring programs, mentoring for mental health programs in your organization, it helps to create, first of all, an efficient method for intergenerational synergy and knowledge transfer. Very, very, very important. I alluded to it earlier when I said as young people or as the younger generation, as junior workers, get the confidence to explore more innovation under the leadership of their mentors. What you have is a more efficient approach to innovation, because they are likely to make less risk under the guidance of mentors that they trust and respect, and they can look up to, and who have likely taken a path that is similar to the one they are now taking in previous times. So it cuts the journey short. There is efficiency for you as an organization. So one of the main benefits, of course, is you have a very strong organizational culture, a warm organizational culture. You have efficient platforms for knowledge sharing, and you also have efficient innovation, right? We also have high level, if I can use that word, employee engagement, right? You have a very strong employer brand, because if you have a mentoring for mental health program as an organization, and you are investing in it, and you are developing it, and you are strengthening it, what happens is that young people, especially millennials, can be attracted to your organization because they know that they are likely to have enhanced development as a result of this mentoring. So it's important to know that your employer brand is likely to be boosted and enriched as a result of mentoring. Now, you will not just be able to attract, guess what? You are also more likely to be able to retain. So you also have better retention when you have mentoring for mental health programs. Now, let me quickly say here that this is, as always, in Amogate, in the spirit of integrity, we only say what we do, and we do what we say. We say what we have done, and we do what we say. I know that by God's grace, we've been able to retain a good number of the young people that have worked with us, and I dare say our mentoring frameworks, our mentoring policies, our mentoring philosophy is one of the reasons why we typically have been able to retain them, and we can help you do this, by the way. If you want to establish a mentoring for mental health program in your organization, please feel free to reach out to us. We can talk about this with you. We have done this, and we continue to do this, right? We have had several mentoring frameworks. We have implemented them, not just periodically, but also consistently, and we have seen firsthand the benefits of this when it comes to being having a strong employer brand, and also having effectively high employee engagement levels, as well as employee retention. Well, last but definitely not the least, it can also lead to succession in leadership, right? Is one of the ones I'm most passionate about, because if you do not intentionally pipeline leadership, then you are just one generation away from extinction as an organization. So if we have mentoring programs, mentoring for mental health programs, it definitely helps us to pipeline leadership, and that way the organization is not likely, the continuity of the organization is not likely to be at risk. Well, it's on this note that we draw the curtain on another edition of Mentoring Mental Health and Public Health. This edition has looked more at the United Kingdom, while the last one looked at the United States, and this edition has also looked more at the workplace, while the last edition looked more at younger people, adolescents, and so on and so forth. This one has looked more at the workplace and how we can introduce mentoring for mental health programs to help the nations of the earth as a whole deal with mental health issues through mentoring, but working through the platform of organizations, the cumulative effect of which will be a stronger mental health nationally and as well as internationally. Thank you very much for doing this with us. You are the reason we do this. It's always a joy, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. We really, really look forward to hearing back from you. You can reach us on arc@theamogate.org, our email address arc@theamogate.org, or more easily, you can send us a message. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you, and you can also send us a message if you want on our WhatsApp line +234 810 999 6666. I'll say that again, +234 810 999 6666. Once again, thank you so much for doing this with us, and we'll be back same time, same station next week. Until then, please do something with what you have heard. If you're a decision maker, think about how you can establish mentoring for mental health programs in your organizations. If you're an influencer, think about how you can advocate for it. At the very minimum, suggest it, ask questions about it in your organization. And if you're a national policymaker, remember our ultimate focus is how there can be more national mentoring framework, which will help to boost mental health globally. Thank you so much, and we look forward to being back with you same time, same station next week. Have a good one.